Welcome into the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. We're giving you our week 7 trade targets, players to buy low. I'm Alfredo Brown. Joined as always, I've got Dave Kluge here. You know what? I misspoke. It's not just players to buy low, players to buy high, players to buy at all kinds of prices. Do what you want. It's America. You're adults. Maybe even if you're not listening to this, America. Welcome to Fantasy Football. Do whatever you want. Dave, it's a time of year where teams are starting to get hit with bye weeks, with crazy amounts of injuries. And I feel like we say it every year, the injuries seem worse and worse and worse. This year it really does seem crazy, even if it's just 1 week or IR or whatever. Trades seem to be sort of the best way to make any sort of movement here in fantasy football right now. It kind of feels like either you got lucky and you didn't get bit by injuries, or you've been hurt by them. And that's kind of it. It doesn't seem like there's any way to climb out of that hole.
Yeah, and it's just getting worse every week. Like the wide receiver injuries that hit last week and 2 weeks ago just keeps getting worse. And it feels very similar to last year where like all of these big name receivers went down with injuries and were underperforming. But it kind of worked out because like the running backs that we were drafting early were crushing it. And then this year, the receivers that got drafted early are all hurt and underperforming. And outside of like two or three running backs, a lot of these early round running backs are underperforming too. So it just kind of feels like a crapshoot with all of the early picks this year. And yeah, I think one of the best ways to shake things up is to try to make some trades.
So listen, guys, if you're in your league right now and you're what, 2-4, 1-5, whatever the record is, there's still hope. Like, this is not the time to give up on the fantasy season. This is where you start to make some trades. You make some moves. If the waiver wire hasn't worked out for you, because it really hasn't worked out for a lot of people, every time you get someone, it just hasn't worked out. This is where you make these trades. Dave, you and I came to the table here with 4 trade targets each. Not all of these are buy low. Some of these are buy high. But I think we've got some really good candidates here. Why don't you kick us off with your first guy?
Breece Hall, I think that he has just looked awesome this year. Like he looks like his pre-ACL self. He's ripping off big plays, which is something that we loved about him when he was a little bit younger. Right now, he's got 11 breakaway runs. That leads the league. No other running back has that many breakaway runs. But he's the RB22 in fantasy because there haven't been a lot of scoring opportunities. But he's 12th in touches. He's 8th in weighted opportunities. He's 6th in target share. And there's this narrative that Justin Fields doesn't check down to running backs because he didn't early in his career. But we saw that big change last year when he was in Pittsburgh, that he was checking down to Najee Harris. He was checking down to Jaylen Warren. And now we see him checking down frequently to Breece Hall as well. And you know what I'm looking for when I'm trying to buy players right now are guys who are getting more touches than they are fantasy points. And right now, like I said, RB22 in fantasy, 12th in touches, and that's because he hasn't scored a touchdown. So I think that we're looking at potential touchdown regression here. And I know, like, the Jets aren't a great offense,
I was
but
about
this
to
is still
say the
right.
Jets might not get a touchdown, but yeah.
Right, and that they might not, and you know, when every time they get near the goal line, it might just be Justin Fields slamming his way in. But I think we also get this like island game bias. All of America woke up early on Sunday to watch one of the worst offensive performances. I mean, like literally putting the offensive in offense. Like it was just terrible.
It-
They got steamrolled by the. I wouldn't even say steamrolled by the Jets. It's like Sean Payton was just like toying with his food. Like he was like trying to humiliate Justin Fields. It was one of the worst games I've ever watched. Like just absolutely terrible. And in that game, Hall was pretty quiet. 22 carries, 0 targets, 59 scoreless yards. But when you look at it, like he's still doing the things that we like. He's 10th in yards per touch. He's 11th in yards per route run. He's 8th in yards per reception. He's been very efficient and he's getting a lot of opportunities. He just isn't scoring touchdowns. And I think that you also look at the possibility that he could get traded. If he does get traded, he's not going to a worse situation. I don't think there's a bottom of the barrel team out there that's like, you know, what really fix us right now is Breece Hall. Like if he gets traded, he's probably going to Kansas City or he's going to the Chargers or he's going to a good offense that really needs a running back. So what we're looking at right now in New York is his worst case scenario where he's still getting a ton of volume and making big plays. And I think if he does get traded, his situation's only going to improve.
I'm looking it up right now. Is Breece Hall? Is Breece Hall?
Final year
Yeah,
of his deal.
he's in
Yep.
his final year of his deal. So
Yep.
it does make sense for a team even like the Chargers, who are like, well, we've got a good rookie running back. Like any one of these contending teams can go and make a trade for Breece Hall. I think that's the only place where my value with Breece Hall lies. Like I'm willing to go and buy him on the chance that he is traded to another team, because like right now I do struggle with like the idea of touchdown regression for the Jets. Right, this team, we don't know that they're actually even going to make a quarterback move, that the offense is going to get better. I know that we saw it's 1 week, but they're also the worst team in the NFL. Like it's not just 1 week. Now losing Garrett Wilson It makes it a little bit scarier, but it could also mean that they're gonna have to rely on Breece Hall even more. Breece Hall maybe becomes the wide receiver one in this offense. Like there's a lot of different directions that this could go, and I'm not trying to waffle on this, but I'm saying like if anything, that lends itself to why you could probably make a trade for Breece Hall at such a low price. Is because I don't think anyone knows what direction this thing's gonna go for him.
Yeah, and it's just like when you look at it, like the weighted opportunities, eighth and weighted opportunities, like touchdowns are going to have to come eventually. Like he's getting goal line looks, he's
He
getting pass
said as
catching
he
work.
held his fist in the air.
I mean, look at like Tedero McMillan, like part of a terrible Carolina Panthers offense. Like there hasn't been anything promising about that offense, but still, like we chase the target volume. And then what happens last week? The targets aren't there, the receptions aren't there, the yardage isn't there, but it evens out and he scores 2 touchdowns. So maybe this is just like a Trey McBride sort of situation where like the targets are there all season, the rushing opportunities are there, and he just doesn't score touchdowns. We have seen that happen historically. I remember Deontay Johnson, I remember Trey McBride, but I think that Breece Hall is good enough that even if the Jets continue to be terrible, he can just on his own accord have that big play every now and then that gets him in the end zone.
Yeah, I'm with it. I'm with it. It's got to be at the right price. For me, I'm gonna go with the running back as well. And my first trade target too. I guess we're saying buy low because the week he had, but it's Quinshon Judkins, running back for the Cleveland Browns. And I know whoever drafted him, this is probably their darling, right? Like they went and they took a risk on a guy who was potentially going to be out for the season, and everyone was panicking. And this person stood above the rest, so congrats to you, and went and drafted Quinshon Judkins, or they were the first ones to nab him off the waiver wire. Either way, this person, like Quinshon Judkins, is the shining star of this team. However, after the last week that we've had here and the change with the Cleveland Browns to Dylan Gabriel, I can imagine there's at least a small percentage of Quinshon Judkins managers that are getting a little nervous and may be willing to move off of him. He had the lowest usage of the season last week. The 52 pass attempts versus 17 rush attempts for the Browns was, I mean, yes, the Browns pass a ton, but even that, like that's like a novelty game plan for the Browns there. Like no one's passing it and putting that kind of ratio to run to pass in an offensive game. We did see, however, for Judkins, lowest snap share in an NFL game for him since his first game in week 2. So like there's enough here where you look and you say, okay, maybe that manager is panicking. And I think this is more of like put a feeler out, find out what the price is, do the price check. I'm not saying move mountains for Quinshon Judkins, but do the price check on him. Fun stat here from Kyle Borgononi over at the Fantasy Footballers, who love Kyle. He puts out a lot of fun stats like this. Quinshon Judkins, when you look at the most touches in the first 5 career games by day 2 running backs of the last decade, he's number 3 in a top 5 list that includes Kareem Hunt, Dalvin Cook, Jonathan Taylor, and Joe Mixon. Wherever those guys are now in their career, we know where they were at that time and how good they were as a young running back. Quinshon Judkins, the volume he's getting is pretty unprecedented. So I wouldn't look at this last week and say, this is going to be who he is now. The Browns are going to keep passing at an unprecedented rate and give Judkins a smaller role as the season goes on, because that's not the case. They get Miami this week. Quinshon Judkins is going to be likely the running back 1 in fantasy football this week, going up against the Miami Dolphins. Then the schedule gets a slightly tougher. Patriots, bye week, Jets. Weeks 11 through 17, the remainder of the season, is the second easiest remaining strength of schedule for any fantasy running back in the NFL. That's what I like here. So you're going to have the blow up game in Miami. Once that happens, the manager's definitely not trading him. And then you have the really nice remaining strength of schedule weeks 11 through 17. That's what I'd love to see. So go out, put a feeler out for Quinshon Judkins.
Yeah, and you said like don't move mountains for Judkins.
You
Judkins
can.
is one of those players I would move mountains for. Like, in my rankings, like I prefer Quinshon Judkins to Cam Scadaboo and Javante Williams and Derrick Henry and Travis Etienne. Like, I think he is that good of a
So
player.
would you do those trades straight up right now? Would you do Cam Scadaboo? I
I would
almost feel like that is a perfect. Cam Scadaboo has so much hype where Quinshon Judkins has cooled off a bit. Cam Scadaboo straight up for Quinshon Judkins, I think feels one-sided at this moment because a lot of people are very high on Scadaboo.
Yeah, and I think that, this is like the perfect time to do it because Giants are about to go on the road in Denver against a very tough defense, and Quinshon Judkins gets Miami. I mean, where do you have Quinshon Judkins ranked this week? I'm just curious because, like, I am totally taking the cheese. I've got him as my RB3, like Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, and Quinshon Judkins. And
Yeah, I was
a
about to
lot of
say, I
that
think I've got him as like RB4 or 5. Like he's pretty high for me.
Yeah, and a lot of it just comes back down, I talked about it briefly on yesterday's show, but, like, watching that Kamani Vidal film, I was just, like, salivating at this upcoming schedule. Like, they get Quinshon Judkins, Bijan, like, it is just like they are getting some really tough running backs in their near future here, and I think it's gonna be a lot of get-right games, so I am way in on Quinshon Judkins, and when I did my rest of season rankings, like, typically when I see a guy way up in the rankings have a down week, I'm gonna move them down. I didn't move Quinshon Judkins down because, like you said, that game felt kind of fluky with how much they were throwing the ball, that we saw a lot of Jerome Ford out there. I don't think that's what they want to do, and I think they're going to try
No.
to get back on track. Like the brightest spot in this offense so far has been Quinshon Judkins, without a doubt. I think they're going to try to get him back on track this week.
And I'm not even worried. Even if, let's say, Dylan Gabriel gets like worse and worse and worse, if they make a change to Shadur Sanders, once you're a team on your third quarterback on the season, I feel like you're not wholly relying on, like, man, the passing game really needs to work. You're just going to keep feeding this running back here. Like, I'm not worried about who's under center for this team.
There's already talk that Deshaun Watson's coming back before the season ends
Oh,
too. I mean, like we
oh
might
boy.
see four quarterbacks this year. It's not fun for Cleveland, but
Oh boy.
at least they've got Quinshon Judkins. He's fun.
At least they got Quinshon Judkins, he said. All right, Dave, let's go to your next trade target here. It's another big name.
Yeah. We talk often about how strong week one biases are, and everyone remembers in week one, AJ Brown, first game of the season, an island
Right.
game that everybody was watching, and we saw one target, one catch, 8 yards, and everybody just panicked about AJ Brown. I can't believe I drafted this guy in round two. And we see this all the time. Like these week one biases hold through the entire year. Like people rostered Isaiah Likely all year when he was giving you low end tight end two production. Jaden Reed had like a huge blow up game, and that kind of clouded everybody's vision on who Jaden Reed actually was. I could go back 2 years. Like I remember everybody panicking because Jameer Gibbs was getting out touched by David Montgomery in week one before finishing as an RB1 his rookie season. So I see and have heard about the panic in AJ Brown, but I'm just here to tell you that things should probably get better. Since that week one game where he only had one target, he's averaging 8.8 targets per game. That's more, or I'm sorry, that the only guys averaging more than him, Devontae Adams, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Garrett Wilson, Jamar Chase, Drake London, Chris Olave, and Puka Nacua. And then we've got AJ Brown on that list. Like he is pulling a lot of targets, and he's only averaging 8.9 half PPR points per game, which is terrible, but also, touchdown regression. He's only scored one touchdown so far this year. The only players in the NFL that have more targets and fewer touchdowns than AJ Brown, Zay Flowers, Jerry Jeudy, Chris Olave. I think Zay Flowers also makes for another good trade target, and you might be talking about him later, Alfredo. I don't know for sure. But when I look at Jerry Jeudy and Chris Olave, like these guys are part of terrible offenses. We don't expect them to score a lot of touchdowns. We have a proven track record of AJ Brown scoring touchdowns and being a dominant receiver in this offense. So he's still the same player he's always been. Ranks 11th in first or 11th in target share, ranks 11th in first read target share, first man coverage. He's been beating man defenders like he always does. It's been a weird year. Like he hasn't had the really big plays, he hasn't had the touchdowns, but I'm going to trust the usage and I'm going to trust the talent here and hope that things rebound. So I sent out a few AJ Brown offers this morning, trying to buy low to see if anybody's panicking or not, because I think there still is this idea that like the vibes are bad around Philly and AJ Brown isn't the player that he used to be. And I think a lot of that is still just anchored to that wonky week one where he was clearly limited with an injury.
The Eagles have been a very pass heavy team over the last couple
Right.
weeks. And I think that's obviously something to monitor here. There's a big difference between, like saying we need touchdown regression for like a Breece Hall or the vibes, for the Jets are bad versus saying now, vibes for the Eagles have been off and we need touchdown regression for AJ Brown and the Eagles. Like this is still the team coming off a Super Bowl victory. It's still a team that has nearly all of the same pieces. Like we know for the most part what AJ Brown is and who he's been through his career. It's been a little bit of a weird season here for the Eagles. So yeah, I think it's going to depend. Like right, you also have AJ Brown coming off his second best performance of the year. So it depends on what this fantasy manager really wants for him. But I
What is
would
that?
say, Dave,
I
do
think it
you
was
think people are going to
80
put
scoreless yards, right? That was second
yeah
best performance
80
of the
80
year. Like that's
scoreless
still
yards here?
that is like a mid game for AJ Brown historically. Like second best game
Right.
of the season and 80 scoreless yards is like nothing that people are like, yes, he's back. Like AJ Brown. No, like it's still not a great performance.
Right. And that's where I get to the question here where this might be too simplistic, but I just like to ask myself, is it more likely that AJ Brown keeps being this player or that he returns to the player that we have seen in the past? Like, what's more likely, that AJ Brown is a wide receiver 3/flex for the rest of the year, or we see the guy who's bordering on wide receiver 1 type weeks, week in and week out, with high touchdown variance and some big
Mhm.
blow up games that are going to win you your week? If that's the case and he's being valued as a low end wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 3, yeah, you make that move. I don't see why not.
And I do think like I don't think that he is this like plug and play wide receiver one anymore. And I've still got
No.
him ranked there because like the weekly upside is so high. I've got him as my wide receiver 11 rest of season. But, I think it changes a little bit. Like, we were really hopeful a couple of years ago that, like, being a part of this Eagles offense unlocked AJ Brown. He could be a top 3 guy. I don't think that's the case, but I kinda look at him as, like, a better version of Jameson Williams, where he's a part of a really good offense, and you're gonna have those games. Like, it's just gonna happen where he's gonna give you, like, 3 catches for 20 yards, and you're gonna not be happy about that. But this is AJ Brown we're talking about. Like, he could still have a 175-yard, 2-touchdown game. That's in his wheelhouse, and we haven't really seen that big boom game yet, but I'm gonna trust that it's coming eventually.
Yeah, same here. I'm good with that one. Let me go to my second player here, and it's another rookie running back. I'm going with Jacory Croskey-Merritt, running back for the Washington Commanders. And this is another guy that's coming off of a rough game. Dave, you've used this term a couple times, an island game where everyone is watching this. It was the second of 2 Monday Night Football games, but everyone was still watching this one because it went longer. And what a lot of people saw is the end of this game coming down to the wire where Jacory Croskey-Merritt fumbles the ball. And it was not a good game for him by any stretch. Like, it was one of those where I think it creates a bigger impact because this was his biggest workload of the season. You get the 66% snap share that gets a jump up. He's typically in the 30 to 40% range. He gets his most rush attempts of the season, 17, after it grows from 14 last week. Chris Rodriguez only played 1 snap. It's not like he was out with an injury. His work, Rodriguez, has gone down every single week. Like, this is Bill's backfield, and I think that's the bigger deciding factor here. Like, it's that intangible thing mentally where he gets more work. People are seeing him in a primetime game. And, pardon the pun here, but like, he fumbled the opportunity, like, in every single way. And I think that's the thing where all of a sudden people see that and the value for him, the perception of his value goes down. It's like, well, he's probably going to go back to a more limited role after he really struggled this past week. When you look at the schedule going forward, man, easiest remaining strength of schedule for a fantasy running back. He's got Dallas this week, where this should also be a blow up game. I know that was supposed to be the case last week against Chicago. I mean, if he does this 2 weeks in a row, okay, we're getting slightly worried here, but it's the easiest remaining strength of schedule all the way through to the fantasy championship. Dallas this week, and then Dallas again in week 17 in that fantasy championship. And we've seen running backs be able to win constantly against Dallas here. So, Dave, with Jaden Daniels returning to the lineup and the Commanders' offense, I think they worked out the kinks a little bit against the Bears, even though they lost. I haven't lost faith in Jacory Croskey-Merritt going forward.
Yeah, I also think Jaden Daniels is, like, still injured. Like, they kinda rushed him back
He
out
didn't
there.
look he didn't look right.
Yeah, and it was also, like, this weird rainy, kinda sloppy game too, so, like, I don't wanna put too much weight into that one. It was, like, bad weather, and Jaden Daniels, like, clearly he
It
doesn't
was
have
that
the rushing
weird
upside he did.
it was that weird, like, Chicago mist, it almost looked like. Like,
Yeah,
on TV, it looked like a mist, and then they would go closer, and it just looked like it was a torrential downpour. Like, it was
yeah,
just the air was water.
yeah.
It didn't see like, it was not a
It
normal
never
circumstance.
looks it never looks as bad on TV as it actually is. Like, I've been to
Right.
Bears games before where it's just, like, dumping and, like, you are just soaked to the bone leaving the stadium, and then you go back and watch highlights, and it's like, "Wait, it just looks like a light fog." Like, that is not what I was living in, but that's just kinda how it is on TV. I'm gonna say something crazy here, Alfredo, but I love that Jacory Croskey-Merritt has been fumbling. He fumbled late in the Chargers game, fumbled early in the Bears game, and he still kept the workload. I don't
I've
like
got
that
a
he fumbled.
Ramondre Stevenson that I can sell you if that's the case.
I don't like the fumbling, I'm being a little facetious here, but, I like that he fumbled and Dan Quinn's faith in him did not waver. Like,
Right.
immediately went right back to him after 2 fumbles, like, at the end of the Chargers game and the beginning of the Bears game. That to me says that he has clear control of this backfield. We were thinking that maybe this could still be kind of mercurial, like, is Jeremy McNichols gonna be involved? Is Chris Rodriguez gonna be involved? No, like, Jacory Croskey-Merritt is fumbling the ball, and they're still giving him the workload. like you said, this was a bit of a down game, which is frustrating because you think that running backs should be able to just like gash this Chicago defense up. But even with the production not there, like he just looks good. He's a very good running back. Like his lateral quickness, we're starting to see him get upfield a little bit or downfield a little bit quicker. That was something you and I both kind of were a little bit concerned early in the year. He was bouncing everything outside, but it just seems like every week he just looks like a more sound running back. And when you got Debo Samuel out here in pregame warmups wearing a Bill shirt. Like he's already won over the locker room too. Like they like him, they support him. He's going to be the RB1 on this team for the rest of the year.
It's just where we're at, man. Like there's no turning back from this. They're not turning the reins over to Chris Rodriguez. Jeremy McNichols has been like strictly passing down stuff. Listen, I have to imagine there's better days ahead for the Commanders' offense, and especially even when Terry McLaurin returns, like this could and should be the offense that we saw from last year with a lot more scoring opportunities. Even though there were some of like the getting run stuff moments there for Bill, there was also still some of those big plays where he was able to bounce things and make something out of nothing. So I just think there will be more of that. It's one of those things too in football where it's just like I know there's the whole any given Sunday moniker that people like to use, but it was kind of true, man. Like the Bears showed up and played a lot tougher on defense than they normally do. They just looked good. Everything was going their way. Jaquan Brisker like just injected life into that defense. It was
Healthy and coming out of a bye is
yeah,
big for the defense too. And
yeah.
yeah, I mean this is definitely one of those like uh, defenses that'll give up a lot of big plays because they are so hyper aggressive, and we just didn't really see the big plays. Like we saw the one little fake screen, the big touchdown, but outside of that, usually what you see from this Bears defense is like loss after loss after loss after loss, and then a huge play. And weirdly enough, like Washington just didn't pop a lot of those big plays in this game.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next player on here. Dave, your third player.
Stefon Diggs, and I talked about him last week, and I kind of dove into the film a little bit, talked about some of the things that I like, but now I'm going to, turn the page and look at some of the data here because I think there's a very strong data case to be made for Stefon Diggs as well. And coming off of a down week like he had last week, I think there is a small buy window open for Diggs. And we did talk yesterday about the Patriots a little bit and said that this might be one of those where it's just like you never really know who's going to go off on any given week. But I dug into that a little bit deeper, and now I'm kind of backtracking a little bit. The issue so far with Stefon Diggs has only been that he's not a full-time player. Running routes on 65.5% of the team's passing plays, that ranks 75th among wide receivers. And it makes sense. He's 31 years old. He's coming off of an ACL tear. They probably don't want to overload him with a huge workload. But when he is on the field, he's pulling a target on 33% of his routes. Jackson Smith-Njigba and Puka Nacua are the only wide receivers pulling targets on a per route basis at a higher rate. He's also averaging 3.26 yards per route run, which is second in the league behind only Jackson Smith-Njigba. So when he's on the field, like this guy is basically doing what JSN is. The problem is JSN's a full-time player. Stefon Diggs is on the field for about 65% of the snaps. So the other thing is also, like I talked about with AJ Brown, like I talked about with Breece Hall, has had awful touchdown luck so far. Jacoby Myers and Jerry Jeudy are the only wide receivers with more targets who haven't scored a touchdown yet. I don't think the Patriots gave Stefon Diggs a 3-year, $65 million contract to keep him as a part-time player. I think he is still recovering from this injury. We got to remember it was like a mid-year ACL tear. The fact that he was out there early in the season was semi-miraculous to me. So I think that we're just going to continue to see this route share grow. We're going to see his snaps grow on a weekly basis. And I'm convinced that Stefon Diggs' best days as a Patriot are still ahead of him, not what we saw in those back-to-back weeks a couple of weeks ago.
I'm I'm still a little worried about the Patriots receiving core. And it's a lot of the same things like we said about Keyshawn Booty. And I I don't think we're going to know who the wide receiver one is in this offense. And maybe that's also something, right? Like where you say it's baked into the cost of Stefon Diggs and you
Right.
can trade a little bit lower for him. Um, it's I think that's so interesting because even though like the value of Stefon Diggs might be low, it feels like the vibes around Drake May and the Patriots offense are so high. And so like I wonder if that fantasy manager who has Stefon Diggs is like, no way, I'm not trading him. I'm just gonna keep putting him in my lineup as the wide receiver three or as the flex, knowing that he can go off with Drake May any week. Um, do you have any idea of like what you would be wanting to give up for a guy like Diggs?
I mean, I always rank like alongside other positions. So like right now I've got
Mhm.
Stefon Diggs ahead of Jordan Addison and Matthew Golden and Wandale Robinson and Mike Evans. Those are some receivers I'd be willing to trade.
Golden or Diggs?
Diggs. I'd prefer Diggs over
Okay.
Golden. And then looking at some running backs, I don't
I
know
think
if
that's your trade if you want to do it, by the way, because
yeah,
Golden's coming off of his basically
he's hot
biggest
right
game
now.
of the
Like
year. Yeah.
that Matthew Golden's so hot right now.
So
Like
damn
everybody's
hot right
buzzing.
now.
Everyone's buzzing about Matthew Golden. But like looking at some running backs, like I wonder, like, could you flip J.K. Dobbins for Stephon Diggs? Because like that's something I happily do.
I don't
Chase
want to do
Brown
it.
for Stephon Diggs, I think I'd do that as well.
That I do.
Um, yeah, but it's just like, and this is wishful thinking, right? Like when you look per route data can oftentimes lead you to a guy that you're just like, why do I have this guy on my team? And we see these guys that have like the
Right.
buzzy per route metrics, and sometimes you end up with Dontavian Wicks, sometimes you end up with Rashi Rice, but this isn't like a rookie that we're unfamiliar with that's putting up good per route numbers. This is Stephon Diggs, a guy who's been a wide receiver one in fantasy his entire career. He's just a little bit older. He's coming off a season-ending injury, and I think he's warming up. But I do not think that the Patriots are going to keep playing Stephon Diggs as a 65% route player. So I think that once we see that route percentage grow a little bit, I'll admit, I think that the efficiency probably comes down. I don't think that he's going to continue averaging as many yards per route run as Jackson Smith-Njigba, but I think as those usage sliders start to go up a little bit, the efficiency will go down a little bit, but I still think that overall we'll be looking at better production. And really, I mean, like he just needs to score a touchdown. That's it. Like this guy has been on the field a lot. He's had 2 games with over 100 yards, hasn't scored a touchdown yet. So I think those better games, the stringing together a handful of good games, I think that's going to come late in the season when it matters most.
Well, I mean, a big part of this too is like when you go to trade for players, it's never going to be a slam dunk of like, yes, this guy for sure is going to be better, right? Like, there's always going to be risk involved in it. So when I say that, like, I'm not comfortable doing it, that doesn't mean that it's not a good player to go and buy low. It just simply means that it's not someone that I would do it for, which is like pretty natural in fantasy leagues, right? Like, typically 10 to 12 managers in there. I don't know. I can't remember how many times I've reached out to people and be like, hey, interested in this guy? And they're like, no. And I'm like, huh,
Yep.
interesting. I thought this was a good sell high guy. Nobody wants him.
And I
So
think
yeah,
like if you are trying to buy somebody in a trade, and there's a common theme with all the guys that I'm talking about today: Breece Hall, AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs, the next guy I'm going to talk about. You got to feel like a little bit like unsure about doing it because like if a guy is like, if you feel great about buying a player, the manager probably isn't incentivized to want to sell that player. Like you need to buy guys that you feel a little gross about. And like the vibes with the Jets aren't great. And like the vibes with the Eagles aren't great. And just the vibes around the Patriots right now. The overall vibes might be good, but the vibes around Stephon Diggs aren't great.
right.
He's a part-time player. He's coming off of a down game. I think a lot of people are going to look at those, back-to-back big games and say that it's kind of fluky. I feel like to really get a good buy low in fantasy, you got to kind of squirm a little bit and like not feel great about making that trade.
It reminds me of the quote from Ted Lasso, uh, where he says, success is a lot like riding a horse. If you're comfortable while doing it, you're probably not doing it right. And it's the same thing with like a trade. Like if you're comfortable while making that trade, I don't know, look in the mirror. Like maybe you're the one that got fleeced here. It's just like there's going to be a little bit of uncomfortability when going through
Exactly.
these
Yeah.
things.
Sure, we'd
Speaking
love to
of,
go out and just like trade for Jonathan Taylor and Jackson Smith and the Jigba, but
yeah,
that's just not
sure.
happening. And like
I have a
you're not
lovely Chase
getting those
Brown
for
for your Jonathan Taylor. He was
he
drafted
was
ahead
drafted
of
ahead of
him.
him.
I do have a friend of mine who like that's how he views players. He'd be like, "No way. I drafted Chase Brown in the first. You got Jonathan Taylor in the second. That's crazy. Like I cannot make that move." And I'm
See,
just
I'd be
like,
taking advantage of that and
I'm like,
just
dude,
trying to
what?
flip the tables on him a little bit. Yeah. Hey,
Yeah,
I
that's
drafted this injured I don't even know, but like hopefully this guy ended up with like a Jonathan Taylor or a Jackson Smith
right.
and Jigba and you could flip your first round pick for him.
Okay, well, a player that I mean, the vibes are atrocious with the team right now. I'm going with Jaylen Waddle, wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins, because things have still been good with him. But this is sort of a, I don't even want to call this a buy low, but this is also, it's both. I think it's a buy low and a buy high, depending on the eye of
Mm.
the beholder here, whoever has him as the manager. You might have someone who has Jaylen Waddle on their roster and say, okay, good, 2 good games. Let me get him out of here. I've been so sick and tired of Jaylen Waddle throughout the season. He finally had some good games. I can sell him for, something that's going to be more consistent, right? And just the vibes in Miami are bad. I'm sure people are going to be worried. Oh, what if Mike Daniel gets fired? What does that do to the offense, right? Like, how does this change here? the Dolphins are still going to be a pass heavy team. This defense is atrocious in Miami. They have to be pass heavy. They're going into another pass heavy matchup this week against Cleveland. And fun stat here from Zadeh Kansabedian, football guy, marked Tyson Campbell, the new corner that was in that Jacksonville Cleveland trade. Tyson Campbell's going to be starting for the Cleveland Browns, and he's been getting targeted at an obscene rate on deep passes this year. Through 6 weeks, he's been targeted 15 times, a league high, and given up the most receiving yards and touchdowns to opposing wide receivers on passes that have traveled 20 plus yards. And we saw Jaylen Waddle have himself a nice deep ball touchdown going up against the Carolina Panthers just a couple weeks ago. He's still producing week in and week out. I don't want to say week in, week out, but over these last 2 weeks here, he's quietly been really good, but I think all the focus has been on Tua and how bad the Dolphins are and Mike McDaniel's pants and who's getting fired. But over 8 targets and 100 yards
Mike McDaniel's pants
per game. Yeah, Mike McDaniel's pants. Everyone's talking about his pants. Have you not seen this? Like, everyone is worried about him wearing capris, and that like you cannot get respect from a locker room with your pants rolled up. Like, if we can see your ankles,
Aaron Glenn,
they're not.
Aaron Glenn also wears capris. There might be something to it. Soft coaches in capris.
There's something to the madness, man.
Yeah, put on some real
That's been everywhere.
No, I did not see anything about this.
Let us know in the comments. Capris, can you respect a man that rolls up his pants? I don't know.
Man.
I don't know. But that's where a lot of the attention has been. And then Jaylen Waddle, over the last 2 games, he's been averaging over 8 targets and 100 yards per game. He's been the wide receiver 5 in fantasy over these last 2 weeks. And the only reason I'm putting it to these 2 weeks is because this has been the team now without Tyreek Hill, and what we're seeing with Jaylen Waddle and how the team has had to adjust. These should have been tough matchups going up against the Chargers and the Panthers, who they're not giving up a ton of points to fantasy wide receivers, but Jaylen Waddle still gave you some fantasy goodness. And then the schedule does get easier going forward. Like I mentioned, there's Cleveland this week, so you're going to see the blow-up game. And at that point, I think if there's 3 big games in a row from Jaylen Waddle after Tyreek Hill is injured and done for the season, I don't think there's any moving Jaylen Waddle at that point. People are just going to hold on to him for the rest of the season. So, and then we got what could be a potential shootout in week 17 against the Bucks for Miami. So like, that's something that I want to hold on to. If the Jaylen Waddle manager in your league is willing to trade him, I'm going to go and make that move.
Yeah, I've got Waddle pretty aggressive in my rest of season rankings. I got him as my wide receiver 16 in the matchup this week against Cleveland. I've got him inside my top 12. I mean, I have been a Jaylen Waddle guy for years, and it feels like every year I just feel like an idiot for touting Jaylen Waddle because week 1 comes out and he does something and ends up in the blue tent, and it's like, well, I don't know what I expected this time. You know, it just keeps happening year after year after year. But
shame on you for drafting a fantasy football team.
Right. But like we know he's such a good player. Like I've written articles just about Jaylen Waddle because like we've seen year 1, an elite target earner. Year 2, like leads the league in yards per route run and yards per target, one of the most efficient players in the league. And then in year 3 and year 4, we started to see the usage and the efficiency merging together in what like tells us that Jaylen Waddle can be a superstar. But like I said, he would just go to the blue tent every single game. And then he'd have these games where he was injured and like on the field, but not doing anything. But like, if you just look at what Jaylen Waddle has done over the last 2.5 years in games that he has been healthy, there's no reason not to view him as a wide receiver 1. And with Tyreek Hill out of the picture now, I could easily see him returning top 10 value for the rest of the year.
I'd try to move George Pickens for him if you can. Like George Pickens is sort of, I love George Pickens' talent. He's been playing great. But there is sort of a ticking time bomb here, and that time bomb is CeeDee Lamb returning. So I'm probably, I don't know where you are with Pickens, but I'm thinking I want to move him as quickly as I can.
Jeff Bell and I had a 23-minute argument on George Pickens last night on the Dynasty show.
Let's make this one 23 seconds.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just like I am on your side. I think here that like I think George Pickens, George Pickens, I think that it's a little bit inflated right now. Like we are seeing him averaging a touchdown per game. CeeDee Lamb is out of the picture, and the weird thing is when you look at George Pickens, like his profile, what he's doing. target share is exactly the same that it's been historically. The difference
Right.
is now he's in what was a tiny, tiny little passing pie in this like joke of a Steelers offense over the last couple of years. And now he's playing on the most pass happy team in the NFL. So George Pickens is exactly who he's always been. He's just on a team that's throwing the ball twice as much as what he used to be on. So I think Pickens is fine. I actually do have Pickens one spot ahead of Jaylen Waddle in my rest of season rankings. But at that point, like it's so tight that if you say you prefer Waddle to Pickens, I'm not going to push back whatsoever.
Yeah, I think that I feel like we're I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but it does feel like we're getting just sort of the bare minimum from Waddle at this point, and we're scratching the surface of how much better he could be going forward and what the volume could really be if the Dolphins have to keep passing the way they are. Whereas like Pickens really just like when you watch the plays, yes, he's playing phenomenal. He's also out kicking his coverage almost every single time. Like it is, man. It's one of those weird things. Like I can't take it away from him. I can't blame him. He's playing great. Like he's
Either he's
turning
going to come
nothing into
crashing back down
something.
to earth, or he is the best wide receiver on the planet. Like
And
it's either one of
that's the
those.
thing. That's the thing, right? And like
Like
when
maybe
CD
he
Lamb
is
comes
just the
back,
best receiver on the planet. Maybe he's going to continue hurtling over defenders and making circus catches in triple coverage. Like maybe that's just what's going to
dude,
continue
he's
happening.
trying to hurdle everyone at all times. Like when like it's not even a hurdleable moment. Like he's
I
just the
know.
guy standing straight up and he's like, I'm gonna jump over you. Where's the tallest guy in your defense? I'm jumping over him. Just pointing him out. All right, let's go to your last trade target that you're looking at.
So again, on brand, bad vibes, bad offense, a guy who's not
Mm.
scoring any touchdowns. I'm trying to buy Alvin Kamara right now. Scored a touchdown in week 1, has been kept out of the end zone since. He's the RB 26 in fantasy right now, but he's 9th in the league in weighted opportunities, 16th in carries, 4th in targets. This is pretty similar to what we've seen from Alvin Kamara historically. But right now, you look at the narratives surrounding Alvin Kamara. He's old. The Saints are terrible. Spencer Rattler isn't good. Kendre Miller looks better. I'm not even going to push back on all those concerns because they are true, but we have seen Alvin Kamara overcome bad situations multiple times throughout his career. This is a guy who just consistently, year after year, churns out top 12 seasons. He's still getting the workload. The touchdown luck has not been there. And similar to Breece Hall, there is the potential run out that he gets traded to a better situation. And then we don't have these concerns about the Saints and Kendre Miller and Spencer Rattler and all these other things. So this is one where he's an older player. He hasn't been scoring touchdowns. People see this young, exciting running back breathing on the back of his neck. And, like we talked about, it should feel kind of gross when you're buying a buy low player. And I think if you're trading for Alvin Kamara, it probably does feel pretty gross. But I would expect that where he is at right now, the RB 26 in fantasy football, I would be willing to bet that based on his usage and based on the player that we're seeing out there, he's going to finish better than RB 26.
By the way, something that like hit here as we're talking about this is I know we're doing these trade targets here on a Wednesday, but you guys can get a head start on this on Monday when we do our game recaps and we go through all the risers and fallers. And you can really get a taste for who we're looking at on waivers, who we're looking to buy and sell, the trends that we're seeing going forward. Like this was something that we used to do on Wednesdays and give you our takeaways, but we're doing that earlier in the week. And you've got a little more time to digest it. And so, like someone like Alvin Kamara, who you're talking about, Dave, I mean, Alvin Kamara, I think we kind of know who he is at this point in his career, but that doesn't mean that he's not valuable for what he is in his career, right? Like, is that more or less how you'd look at it? And like the current vibes around both Kamara and the Saints. The Saints have been surprisingly good, and they seem like they can actually sustain someone, especially with the way Spencer Rattler's playing. They can sustain someone being a fantasy asset.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say good, but they're a step above terrible, which is I think where expectations were
Good.
coming into the
Yeah,
year.
I think good comparatively, right? It's like what
Right,
we thought. Like we thought they were going to be easily the worst team in the NFL,
right.
and they've been decent. Where it's like, okay, we all kind of thought Kendrick Miller was taking over, but we talked about it, on Monday. It's like he's not really taking over. It's still Alvin Kamara, and you mentioned him as a riser for that game on Monday.
Right. And I think the biggest issue is we're not seeing the insane passing down usage he got last year. Like last
Mhm.
year, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but if I recall, he was averaging like 7 or 8 targets per game with
Yeah,
Derek Carr.
it was nonsense. It was crazy.
And Spencer Rattler is a little bit different of a quarterback. He's a little bit more of a gunslinger, where Derek Carr was this like, veteran that knew how to read defenses and he trusted Alvin Kamara. Spencer Rattler is just like that guy's got three defenders on him, but maybe he'll come down with this ball. Only one way to find out, and he'll just let it rip. Where, I would like to see a little bit of maturation there where he's willing to get through his progressions, get the ball to Alvin Kamara. But also, when you look like Kellen Moore's offense, that's just not what it is. Like, we didn't see Saquon Barkley, for as great as his 2024 season was last year, he wasn't catching a lot of passes there. Like, they don't draw up a lot of plays to get the ball to the running back in the passing game.
Mhm.
So I think that's the major concern here. But either way, like, just looking at the volume alone, the weighted opportunities, like I said, ninth in the league in weighted opportunities, that tells me that he should be turning in RB1 production, but hasn't scored a touchdown, and that has really, or hasn't scored a touchdown since week one, and that's really impacted him. So I think, like, worst case scenario is you're getting a guy who's going to be like a middling RB2, and if he stays in the Saints. But again, we'll just throw it out there. The Chiefs need a running back. The Chargers need a running back. Like, there are good teams out there right now that have made it known that they're in the running back market. Alvin Kamara has said he doesn't want to be traded. The Saints have said that they aren't going to trade him, but crazier things have happened.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think he moves, but the last guy that I want to talk about, I sort of said he's like a cheap version of Alvin Kamara, because I think Alvin Kamara is already going to be pretty easy to buy in fantasy. But this last guy I'm going to talk about, I honestly forgot he existed. And as I started to look through rosters, I started to think, Aaron Jones kind of becomes interesting, running back for the Minnesota Vikings. And uh, the vibes, once again, in Minnesota have been very weird. JJ McCarthy, is he actually good? How long is Carson Wentz going to start? You've got the Vikings coming off the bye, and really, most people have kind of forgotten about the team. We haven't been talking about them for a while, and last time we were talking about them, it wasn't great. Let alone Aaron Jones, who's been on IR for a while. And you and I were not big advocates of go out and draft Aaron Jones, and you need to stash him on your team, especially with the way Jordan Mason was being talked up all summer. Jordan Mason came into a couple games and he looked good at the start, and then things cooled down.
Which I want to say
And
we called that. Like, when
yeah,
we looked, we were like, he's
I,
got two great matchups, and then it gets a lot more difficult. And good for him. He smashed against good matchups. That's what running backs should do. But yeah, it got a little bit tougher after that.
and that's the thing, is like, this is not a backfield that is all of a sudden only belonging to Jordan Mason. As Aaron Jones comes back, we're probably going to see a little bit more of him, especially if JJ McCarthy is going to be back in as the starter. He was dumping the ball off to Aaron Jones. There's going to need to be that veteran presence of a guy who can help him out on passing downs. And Vikings coming out of a bye, Aaron Jones does have to sit one more week, which that's interesting rule, by the way. Like, I did find out that I was looking at this earlier. I had always thought that, like, bye week counted as a week on IR. Does not.
Nope.
You have to miss an actual game. So he will be out for week 7 here versus Philly. But weeks 8 through 11, Dave, are all matchups that could be high passing volume. You take a look at the opponents: Chargers, Lions, Ravens with Lamar Jackson back, the Bears. Like, these are teams where, even if it does end up being a little bit more run heavy, I think Aaron Jones gets some run there where he can have a few of those big pop off plays. But for the most part, Aaron Jones to me is supposed to be an Alvin Kamara light. This is strictly for a team that is right now 4-2 or 5-1. You have some, some house money to play with here, where you're saying, you know what, I just want some more depth. I want a guy who can be an RB3 or a flex play for me. I want to have a little more depth here. Let me trade off some guys that have looked hot at the moment here, but doesn't look good going forward. Or you do the 2-for-1s, right, where you trade 2 of your bench guys for one guy who can come in and potentially be a flex for you. And that's how I'm viewing Aaron Jones here. Vikings are already 11th in pass play percentage. And like I mentioned, with some of these matchups coming up, they could be passing a bit more. Fantasy playoff schedule also looks good. Washington, Dallas, New York Giants, Detroit. Detroit in week 17 is one of those where I'm just like, man, Vikings and Lions in week 17, the ball's just going to be flying through the air a bunch. So, yeah, I kind of put him here almost as like a throw-in player to even talk about, because that's kind of how you should value him in the trade market, and that's likely how the fantasy managers are going to value him. Like, I wouldn't even be making a single trade for Aaron Jones straight up. I'd be lumping him in to someone else that we have on this list here and be like, yeah, why don't you just throw in Aaron Jones, and I think we got a deal.
I like that. And I think that this is like a true buy low. And I like this. Like, when we are thinking outside the box, I think Aaron Jones is a guy you should go out and get. And I was looking at this a couple of days ago, but like, Xavier Scott is a guy that, like, I'm plugged in. I'm in the know. Like, I know football
Yep.
players. I did not know who the heck Xavier Scott was when I started like looking at depth charts coming on and going into week 3. I was like, this can't be real. Like, this is
Surprising
a
spelling of his name too. It's not
right.
even an X, it's a Z, everybody.
Yeah, so like this guy just like came out of absolute nowhere, and I think everybody
Yeah.
assumed that with Aaron Jones out of the picture, it was just going to be 100% of the opportunities going to Jordan Mason. Xavier Scott has averaged 8 opportunities per game in the 3 games that Aaron Jones has missed, and what that tells me is that Kevin O'Connell just wants to maintain this split backfield, and then he wants to have this receiving back who can come in and do those things. So Xavier Scott, he's just keeping the seat warm for Aaron Jones. I completely with you. I love buying Aaron Jones here. And this is another one of those guys that kind of fits in with the theme of like, you don't feel great about it. It's like an old running back on a team that we
No.
have weird vibes
Coming
about,
off a
but
hamstring injury, like I get it. It should be uncomfortable.
and that's why you're getting him for probably close to nothing. So yeah, I really like the idea of what you're saying. Like, target Aaron Jones. This is something Jeff says a lot when making trades is you change your eyesight a little bit. Like you might you might not even care about the big piece of the trade. You might be doing like a flip for 2 guys that you have in the same tier, but then you just do the and throw in Aaron Jones while you're at it too. And like that's really your actual target in the trade. So see if you can do that. Like look at the manager who has Aaron Jones. See if you see 2 guys, like one guy in your team and one guy on his team that are in a similar tier, and then see if you can get that Aaron Jones throw in.
By the way, just a random guy. Like I almost added him to the list, and then I saw how low his rostership percentage was. Isaiah Likely is only 18% rostered in sleeper leagues, and I was almost gonna make him a guy to trade for. Just wanted to throw his name in there. Just go take a look. His schedule is one of the easiest for tight ends going forward. There's rumors about Mark Andrews getting traded, and he already played more snaps than Mark Andrews last week, coming off of his injury. So that's another one that I'm intrigued by. But Dave, we went 8 players here, threw in an extra ninth for people who stuck around here to the end. But you and I are going to be back again tomorrow with our week 7 tiers and rankings. And we figured this is going to be a lot more, like, a lot more helpful for people that are looking at who they're going to start in week 7 and how to make decisions instead of just like here are 7 or 8 cherry picked, situations to look at. Let's give you everything, right? And of course, all of this can always be found on footballguys.com where you can see our rankings that are fully customizable to your league settings, your scoring settings, and you can see upside, downside. You can see all of our analysts there. You can see projections. There's so much for you. So head on over to footballguys.com. As always, I want to thank everybody for watching or listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave, we'll see you next time. Adios.